Rev up your engines! Okay, today I have the car that really launched Acura, the Acura Legend. This is a 94 version of the car. I had a customer in Houston that had one of the first 10 in the country. He got 300-something thousand miles out of it. He loved the car. Now, let's face it, the original Honda had a 590cc two-cylinder motorcycle engine in it that got it around. And then they made the Civic with a regular four-cylinder inline engine. They kept getting bigger and better. Then they decided, let's make luxury cars. And they came up with this thing. And just like Lexus came up with their 400s, and it was a big hit, so was the Legend. They were beautiful looking cars. This one's got the gold trim here. Still has the original wheels. They were fast and fun to drive, but unlike other cars of the day, they didn't fall apart. They ran a long time. They get decent gas mileage for the speed that they had, but Honda, being a Japanese car manufacturer, they took a basic luxury car and they kept perfecting it. A lot of room inside, 4-door. Now, this is a sportier version. It's got the 6-speed standard transmission. They didn't make that many with the 6 speeds in it, so it really has a lot more performance than the ones that had automatic transmissions. But here in the United States, they sold the crap out of automatic transmission ones because Americans are lazy. They don't like shifting, so they sold an awful lot of them. And they had plenty of power. But like I say, people weren't used to getting a sporty car that didn't leak oil, that broke all the time, that just kept running and running and running and not have any problems, that had freezing cold air conditioning. This was a new concept to Americans in sporty cars. They were used to foreign cars that fell apart when they were driving them down the road and cost a fortune. That's why Acura and Lexus, in terms of pure volume, they ate the Europeans alive. Was at a good price point. The first Legend was $19,258. Keep that in mind, because the first Lexus LS400 was $35,000. So you're talking about almost twice the price. Mind you, this isn't a V8, but it's a very good sporty car to drive around in. And truthfully, this thing handles better than a Lexus LS400. The LX400 were more a luxury. This is more of what you could call the first sports sedan, really, a luxury sports sedan. They didn't call them those things in that day, and now everything has to have a name today. But for what it was, 4 doors, a nice powerful engine, AC that worked, cars that don't break down. This was a revolutionary car that really got the ball rolling for Acura. And of course, Acuras are just fancy Hondas. So they also got into the Integras that were 4-cylinder engines, but they were excellent cars across the board, and this was their flagship. So let's go inside an old flagship. As we get inside, this will just show you. Okay, this is a 94. Look at the leather. Is it ripped and torn? No. There's a little fading. They're always going to do that. You can re-dye them. But, I mean, check it out. This leather's still excellent. And the thing that I like about them is the front seat's all the way back. I still have plenty of leg room, and I got long legs. These were comfortable, luxurious cars. They knew what Americans wanted, so they put a killer stereo system in too. As we look from the back seat to the front, we'll see, hey, it's still got the original Bose in it. Got all the little buttons and everything. And like I said, it is a 6-speed standard transmission. So you get a lot of fun driving one of these things around. And driving it over here from North Carolina, you got 28 miles a gallon on the highway. For a car this old with this much power, pretty good gas mileage. The other thing, most back in these days, cars that had this kind of performance, they get horrible gas mileage. They get in the teens. They really know what they were doing when they designed this thing. They put a lot of thought into it. Go under the hood and check that out. The main reason of existence for this vehicle is the beautiful 3.2-liter V6 engine, Type 2. I mean, check it out. It looks like a work of art. And look, it's metal. It's metal. It's not plastic. Of course, it's got anti-lock braking system on it. It's still got the original air conditioning compressor. The only real downside of this car is it does have a timing belt. And of course, if you know anything about Hondas and Acuras, many of their V6 engines, even to this day, are using rubber timing belts. So you want to change them every 100,000 miles or so. This guy just bought this car, and he had his mechanic change it, because you don't want to ruin an engine because the belt breaks on it. I do have to say, they were pretty well made. As I said, one of my customers in Houston, eons ago, had the first model that came out in the 80s, one of the first 10 in the country, and he had 300-something thousand miles on that thing. And he asked me, oh, gee, should I change the timing belt? I said, well, they're interference engines, you should. And I told him what it was going to cost. He said, it's got 300,000 miles on it, I don't care. Drove it, and when he got about 325, 327, then the belt broke, pistons hit the valves, and he junked the car. But he had gotten all those miles out of it, and he didn't care anymore. He said, time for another car anyways, I've had it all these years. And then he went out and bought himself, believe it or not, a beautiful little Mazda Miata. And it was also a standard transmission too. Well, start it up. Starts right up. Make sure it's in neutral. It may be old, but man, it's still smooth. Doesn't shake at all. That's what these things are known for. Smooth, dependable power with good gas mileage. And since it's an Acura, it really has good suspension. That's the one thing where I give Honda an edge over Toyota, is that the Hondas handle better. They're more fun to drive. They're just more of a racing type car. Somebody who's a serious driver. You'll generally always see more Hondas and Acuras with standard transmissions than you will Toyotas. Of course, that said, 95% of Americans drive automatic transmissions these days, so this definitely is a blast from the past. So let's take it for a spin. Now, they're not really low to the ground, but they're not high. You get a nice, comfortable driving position in one of these. And as you can tell, the car is still pretty quiet. I don't hear wheel bearings, I don't hear any kind of noise, other than the tires on the road. And they handle quite well in the curves. Even though it's old, it's still, these things were made for driving around. They're a driver's car. What this car was made for? Cruising. Just going out in the country, going anywhere and cruising. He had a later model Acura, and he likes the ride of this better because this was a luxury touring car. Even though it's really old, it's a 94, you don't get wind noise in this thing. It is just, you could get in this thing and drive to California and have no problems at all, even though it's an old car, because they made them well. They made them solid, they wanted them to last, and they still last. And of course, this one is becoming more of a collector's item. Hardly any 6-speeds out there. A lot of these people just wore them out and they're gone. So as time goes on, these and certain Integras are going up in value. If you're thinking about buying one, my advice would be buy it sooner than later, because I think the price will just keep going up and up and up as time goes on. The old, but look, it's got airbags. And there's an airbag over here. Now, the guy who bought this had a later model TLX, which he sold for $30,000. Then he bought this thing. Even he was kind of cramping his pants because he bought it in Seattle, drove it to North Carolina, and they would only let him insure it for like $18,000. And he was worried because he knew it was worth more than that. So when he got home, deliberately went to another insurance company and he got the rider. And that's what you want. If you buy a collector's car, you want to have it appraised by an appraisal, then have the rider on your insurance to say, this is the value of the car. Because I've had many customers in the past, some of them are so unlucky, they were driving the car uninsured from the buyer to their house, got in a wreck, and the car was totaled, and they lost everything. Or a nice car like this, where they say, well, it's a 94. Somebody rear ends them and totals the car, and they say, well, here's $3,500 for the car. You have to get a rider if you buy a collectible car. And in this case, it's not that bad. He says it costs him like $60 a month for insurance for this thing. Now, that's one of those policies that you can only drive 5,000 miles a year. He doesn't care. This is a toy that he takes out once every week or two. He drives his other cars as the driver cars. And that's another advice that I have for anybody that wants to buy a nice car like this. It's older. If you have common sense, this is your baby, your toy. Do not use it as an everyday driver, because you're going to wear it out. You're going to put heavy mileage on it. The value is going to go down. And anything old enough, eventually things are going to wear, just because, okay, oil seals, they're made out of rubber. Eventually the rubber's going to rot, right? Well, you might think, well, that seal only costs 20 bucks. What if it's the rear main seal of the engine? You got to pull the transmission off, put the seal on, put it in. It's going to cost you a fortune. Or if you do it yourself, it's going to be all that work. You don't want to do high mileage with classic cars. You want to make sure they're insured and have fun with them, but don't drive them 20,000 miles a year unless you get them dirt cheap and you don't care. Then it doesn't make any difference. Now, you know how Honda started Acura, with a luxury car that really got the ball rolling for them. Of course, now everybody's poo-pooing cars and they want SUVs and crossovers, but this truly is a legend of cars. And this particular one is in immaculate shape. So now you understand the history, you understand the car. If you're thinking about buying one, I personally would stick to the standard transmissions like this. And if you can find the 6-speeds that are much rarer, they're worth more, they're more fun to drive. And in the long run, they will probably appreciate a lot more than the other ones, because ultimately, the value of a car has to do with how many were made and how many are left. Because they might have made a whole bunch of them. But if there's only a handful of them left, the value goes up. That's just how the market works. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.